It's time now for the Tom Lacey Sports Show. Here's your host, Tom Lacey.
Good morning. We have two excellent guests today. Are you guys, Bill and Bob Finney? You guys there as a conference call? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We're both.
Good morning.
Okay. Yeah.
Good morning to both of you. I'm going to start out by just introducing both of you on some of your accolades, and the one thing, first of all, is you're the only brothers ever to play Division I basketball. There are actually, Peru has two Division I football players, Larry and Peter Ewald. So Peru obviously is an excellent school for sports. There's no doubt. But let's see. Bob played. Both of you played at Syracuse, and the one thing that you're both from Peru, both 1,000-point scorers at Peru. And did you guys play together? What's the difference in ages?
My mother, this thing was ingrained in us. 2 years and 2 months.
Okay.
My mother, and we're 2 years and 2 months separate. And I was a senior when Bobby was a sophomore on our team, and then he took the next 2 years when I left. So he won sectional 3 years in a row.
And you guys, Bob, you only lost one game, right?
One game for what?
For 3 years?
In your senior year.
We lost one game. I did.
Why do you say you did?
Well, I lost. We lost one game for the 3 years I played.
That's amazing. The one question everyone's asking, and I already told Bill already. Everyone's asking, and they don't want to name who they are. There's probably 10 of them that said, "Who's better, Bill or Bob?" And or who was at their peak? Who was better? There's a tough one. Bill, you go first.
Bob.
Oh, okay. There's the humbleness.
No. At his peak, he was playing with some of the really great ball players in the Southeast and in Florida with the amateur team. It was like this men's Phillips 76ers type team. And he was, Bobby can tell you about this, as far as who were the players, Bobby, on these teams.
We had one of the great guards that played in the ABA, Steve Cuban.
Okay.
He was an All-American at Rhode Island and played, the entire time with the ABA. But he was drafted number 1 by the Golden State Warriors.
Oh my gosh!
And,
wow.
He was a super player, great playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another guy by the name of Ron Perry. A lot of these guys played with the Floridians of the ABA, but Ron played with the Pittsburgh
Condors
or Indiana Pacers.
Wow!
And Steve played with the Nets and the Pacers, and in fact the two of them were traded at the same time. And Steve went to Indiana, and Ron went to the Nets. And they were real good ball players. But Steve was a great player. He really, he could really play ball. And he actually was played with the guy from New York City. What the heck? The great player from New York City he couldn't play in the NBA because he got banded for gambling.
I can't remember his name either. That's okay. I'm going to talk about Bob, you graduated from Peru in 1969. You played football, cross country, basketball, and baseball, and obviously your primary sport was, basketball. And you lost one game in Section 7 play in your last year, and that was you lost to some team from Long Island, but you
Long Island, yes.
Yeah, you scored over 1,000 points, and you averaged 25 points a game your senior year, and you had 40 against Mariah. Wow. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I do. And the guy that used to keep the score, John Zeron,
Oh, yeah.
he came in after the game and he says, "Hey, Bobby, you scored, I think 40 or was it 40 or 42 points or something?"
Yep.
And I said I did. I didn't think I scored like that, but yeah, I do remember that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of other games that.
I'm sure you had a whole bunch. Bill, as a player, you also scored 1,000 points, and you won sectional championships. Did you play 4? Oh, back then you could only play 3 years of varsity. I'm not really sure.
No, I wasn't. I was not a good player as a freshman,
Okay.
as far as making the varsity team, and and my JV coach was Mike Bove, who really he was a solid fundamental coach and helped us become. In fact, I didn't even start on the JV team for a while, and I just got to love the game. That's I remember at the end of my freshman year, Bobby and I, with the help of our father, put up a backboard in the backyard of the house. We lived, at that time, we lived on 1 Pleasant Street, Peru, New York, but it's the same address now is 15 Pleasant Street. I don't know how that changed, but it did. And we had, we put the backboard up. Do you remember that, Bobby, when we were putting the backboard up with Dad?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun for the weekend. And then Dad had the pavement, because it was all just rubble and dirt. He had it paved, so we had a backboard in a basket with a paved driveway, and we could play basketball. And we just started playing basketball all the time on that court, all the time. We'd be out there till 10 o'clock at night, and our neighbors, the Russells, they must have been crippling them. They'd have to come out. You got to come in. You got to come in. There's not enough of this stuff. And then when during the winter time, we'd shovel it off and play out there in 20-degree weather. We loved to play the game. We had all the kids come over and we played pickup games, and we were passionate about basketball.
You guys obviously loved growing up in Peru.
Bobby, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Growing up in Peru was one of the great things. Everybody in the neighborhood, we all played basketball, of course, in our backyard. All the kids at our age, and we played baseball down at the one of the empty lots in Peru.
Well, we had all empty lots too. We had Joey Owens Field. We had field on Jenkins Street with where we could hit it over the ditch for home runs. We had the Mullins Field over by the Catholic Church. So we had a roving fields that we'd all meet on Saturday morning, and we'd play till noon, go home for lunch, and come back for the afternoon and continue playing. It was just unbelievable. And no parents there either. It was just the kids got together, organized the games, and they played baseball.
And we also, in the winter, they would flood the tennis court, and the only tennis court in town, and we'd play hockey. And a lot of us
guys
were
played everything.
Skaters. Yeah, a lot of us played, skated in the speed skating races in Plattsburgh all the time. And so we all had the tubular or racing skates with the long ends to them.
if we were playing.
Sticking out. And they had to shut the tennis court down because everybody was getting stitches from kicking at the puck and putting holes in our legs. So the town shut down the tennis court for hockey. But we played everything. We played baseball. We played pickup football up at the field. And the funny thing about it, most of the kids we played with, Barney Woodward and I'm trying to think who else we had. Barney Woodward went on to be the leading rusher all time of Buffalo.
Wow.
And we had Keith and Kenny Defiant, and we had who else played there in our backyard?
Bruce Frechette was there.
Bruce Frechette, yeah.
Jerry Grant, his grandfather owned the drugstore downtown. And if we weren't on the field, we were at the drugstore downtown, either in the basement. And we had this gang of kids that always hang around and just try to figure out what we're going to do next and have a good time.
And that's where it starts right there. Someone wanted to ask you about where you guys sold ice cream, Finney's Freezer it was called?
Yep. Right off from the air base exit. I think it was at exit 36 at South Plattsburgh. My dad bought a piece of property there, and we put up a soft ice cream stand. And I started that when I was, I think, in 8th grade or so.
I was in 6th grade. Yeah. And they did it to put us through college.
Okay.
And then, of course, both of us got scholarships. And they had the money to put us through college, so they sent us a weekly amount while we were in college. So they always and plus my parents drove down to Syracuse for all the games, and once when I was in high school and Bill was in college, they would go to my game, and then after the game they'd go up on the mountain, on the mountainsides and try to pick up the game in Syracuse and listen to the Bills game. And we'd go to school the next day. I go to school the next day, and they'd say, "Hey, I saw your mother and father parking up in the mountain road." And I said, "No, they were listening to my brother's game in Syracuse." And they said, "No, I think they're just a couple of wild parents." But they went to every game down in Syracuse when we were both there.
That's great.
They would get out of work and drive straight down, go to the game, and then turn around and go back home. They'd have dinner or something to eat with us, and then they'd travel back home. And they were traveling all the time.
That's
my mother would make a quart or 2 quarts of ham salad. She'd cook a ham and make a ham salad, and so she brought that to me for sandwiches for the week at Syracuse because I loved her ham salad.
I heard someone told me when you guys did run Finney's Freezer, Bobby's baby cones were like XXL. That's what I was told. Yep. I mean,
I remember Matt Glarnell used to come down every day, and of course he was my teammate in high school, and he would come down every day and get a banana split, and he'd have to come in the back door to get it out because it wouldn't fit through the window. He was always there. He loved my banana splits I made for him, and Billy came down one day and he went to the front window, and I was working out in the front, and he said, "Give me an ice cream cone." I said, "How big?" He said, "Oh, good size." He had to come around the back to get it out.
It was a 3-pound
through the window.
It was a 3-pound strawberry soft ice cream.
Bill, do you remember a bench clearing brawl versus Army when Bobby Knight was coaching? I believe you were at Syracuse. You remember that at all?
No.
You don't? Okay.
I vaguely remember that, but there was another bench clearing stop the game brawl when we were playing at West Virginia, and it made we had a picture of the end of the game, which was about 5:29 to go in the game, in which my roommate, my center, the center of the team, Bill Smith, there was an altercation with the referee, and that just emptied the court. I mean, people emptied onto the court, and it was a melee, and they had to stop the game, bring state police in to escort us out of town.
Wow.
And we got there not by buses in those days. I think we went into town with 3 station wagons. That's how we traveled. That game was stopped. But that's the game that I was involved with where it was definitely stopped, and we discontinued. We lost the game.
Can you tell me about the game? I believe it was the NIT, where I might have been your senior year, Bill, in college, and you just played really well. Do you remember that at all?
No, my last game in college was at the NIT against Maryland, and at that time, that was my 5th year. I redshirted the year, and I came back, and I didn't get much playing time in my 5th year, and I got in for 13 seconds in that game against Tom McMillan. I guarded him, but the real point there was that the coach of the Maryland team was Lefty Drizel.
Oh yeah,
and he recruited me when he was at Davidson, and that was my second choice of going to Davidson to play for Lefty. And if I had gone there his first year, he then moved to Maryland. But when I went to Davidson, I met Lefty and his family, and his 4-year-old son Chuck was one of the people who I met there as his family member. And later on, when I was the athletic director of Marymount, I would hire Chuck as our men's basketball coach. And so it came, there was so many connections with Lefty along the way that he happened to be there for my final game when I was in college, and it was just amazing that, and Chuck was a great basketball coach for us at Marymount too. So,
as at Marymount, and Bill, Bob, I'll get to you, but Marymount, I believe you had 553 wins, and you set some really excellent records there. You coached some great players. You went to the Final Four one year. Obviously, you became an excellent coach, and then you were athletic director. Are you still the athletic director at Marymount, or I'm not really sure what you're both doing now. Both retired?
Thankfully, I'm retired.
Okay.
Yes, no longer thinking about all the problems of going through being an athletic director as well as the women's basketball coach. But
sure.
I attribute my coaching background to the people who started us at Peru. Tony Papro, I always remember what Tony did for us as kids. He opened the gym up every Saturday morning because we were going to sneak in one way or the other. So he just went over and said, we'll open it up. So we had Saturday morning basketball. And then, and I learned from Tony this thing I call the 3-line drill, where he would try to organize us a little bit just to start off, where we would learn how to give and go, pass and screen away, or pass and screen on the ball. And I took that drill that he was doing with us to my college coaching days, and I was doing that over and over just to teach the game of basketball. And so Tony was one of our coaches, and then as I said, Mike Bove, and then we had Frank Ruane at Peru, who was this excellent fundamental coach and didn't take. He was highly disciplined. And then we lightened up a little bit with Harry Brown, and that's when I played 1 year for Harry. Bobby played 2 years for Harry, and we were undefeated my senior year, And were you undefeated the next year too, Bobby? So you went 2 years undefeated?
No, just 1 year while I played ball, and then we lost my junior year in Long Island, junior and senior year, and we also, I think the only game we ever lost. No, I think that was the only game we ever lost.
Okay, and then Bobby finished up with, you had John Ninehouse, right, as your senior year?
John Ninehouse, who was a great coach. He would really get you going. I mean, if he was at Syracuse and Boeheim had what John had, he could do anything to get you to play.
Motivationally.
I hear
the motivation. He would have been one of the great coaches of all time.
I hear nothing but great things about him. Nothing but.
Yeah, I ended up working for him. He became the vice president of a tire company called Tire Kingdom here in Florida, and he was vice president of the company, and he hired me when I was down here in Florida to be a manager of a couple of his stores. And he just motivated everybody in there, and they used to put up a shield, because when John talked, he used to spit a little bit, and he'd be yelling and spitting. So they put the shield up, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys." He's up, put it down. He said, "I'll try not to do that." But he would get in there like he was coaching a basketball or football game, and he was unbelievable.
Bill, we'll start with you on this. Tell me about your best high school game. Toughest loss, best win, and toughest to defend. Toughest person to defend. There's 4 questions there.
I think the best high school game was my final game when we won the sectionals, and that week we did it at the MEI gymnasium, and I think we played Plattsburgh High School. Tom Hurley, he was excellent shooting guard, and he was really tough for us. And that week, I think I'd been sick up through Thursday with the flu, and I had to get to school on Friday or I wouldn't be able to play. So I ended up going into school on Friday, and I didn't even know if I was going to, what was going to happen. And I ended up, I think we beat Plattsburgh High School. It was going to be a real tough game, and I think we ended up beating them by 20.
Wow.
And it was just a great win for us. Mike Mannix did the play-by-play.
Yep.
And I don't know if he was working for Wiry then or who, but and he did a tape of the game, and for the longest time I had the tape of that game, but it's no longer. I lost it somewhere in the moves and all that. But I think that was the greatest high school game. As far as the hardest person to defend was probably, I think his first name was Jerry Sion from MAI.
Okay, yes.
About a 6'5", 6'6" hit post player, and he was really he was very tough to defend, and we had our battles. And
he ended up playing at Villanova.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I never realized that.
Yeah.
And then you asked one other question.
Toughest loss.
I'll tell you, the toughest loss was my sophomore year. Every time we played Plattsburgh High School, and they had Harry Yell, Jeff Burns, Stu Key, and I think Chris Rawlings or something like that, of a guard.
Rawlson.
And George. What was his name?
George Kimball was their coach. Yes.
George Kimball was the coach, but no, what was the other guard was it Chris Rawlings?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, they had a great team, and they just that was always I wasn't looking forward to playing them, but I was a sophomore, and I probably couldn't bench press more than 75 pounds.
Same questions for you, Bob. Same ones. Your best high school game? Yep.
I would say when we played Saranac, and the game when Saranac came to our gym, we ended up having a little fight at the end, and they had it all the guys that followed our basketball were out on the floor fighting, and Harry Brown was the coach, and I remember we were playing Roger Long, and Harry got into words, and then Roger Long's dad came out and he grabbed Harry Brown right around the neck, and I was standing next to him, and Harry started turning blue. His face he couldn't breathe.
Wow.
And I grabbed Roger Long's dad. I grabbed his arm and I pulled it off Harry, and Harry's swinging, and anyways, it was pretty bad because they met us in the sectionals, the final game, and they had it at Plattsburgh High School, and they had the state police had to come and watch, watch the game, make sure there's no fights. But and then of course we had John Rock and Mike Rock and that crew, and they all they want to do is go get the boys from Saranac. They were all set for that game. They were all right there. They had their fists all shined up so they could start swinging. But
who was
that game? That last game in the sectionals was a tough game, but we ended up beating them pretty good.
The toughest player that you ever had to defend, Bob, would that be? Who gave you trouble in high school?
High school.
Don't say no one gave you trouble. That would be funny. But there must have been someone that you probably say, "Oh, might have a little tough game with this guy." So.
Well, I tell you, the leading scorer in the county or in our league was John Daggett from Keysville.
Yeah, I heard of him.
And I think he was the leading scorer, and I went in that game, and I think I was like second leading scorer in the league. And I think at halftime I had like 30 points.
Oh my gosh!
And he didn't have hardly anything.
So you passed him.
We ended up and that game was on TV. They used to have games on TV from Burlington. And I remember it was really cold out that night, and my grandmother lived right down the street, and she used to go to all the games. And I said, "Why don't you just stay home tonight and watch it on TV?" I said, "It's just too cold to go out." And anyway, she did, and I played real good that night. And they had me on. They interviewed me after the game, and I remember they, when you're interviewed, a lot of times they don't ask you the best questions.
Sure.
How'd you learn to do this? And they asked me the question on how did you learn to rebound like that? And I said, when I grew up, I picked apples. And
yeah. You stuck one in there.
Anyways, I said they used to give me the tallest tree, and I used to have to jump for the apples, and that's how I learned how to rebound.
Oh my gosh.
Well, my grandmother was listening to the game. She listened to the interview after the game, and I went down to see her at the game, and she says, I'm totally embarrassed in what you said. She says, "How could you say something like that? That you're making fun of them?" And I said, "No, I wasn't, Grandma." I said that, they asked a question that wasn't really the best question in the world. How I learned to rebound. Well, I figured, that's the best way I can tell them. And she said, "Well, you only picked apples part time." And I said, "I know, but I had to jump for the apples, some of the trees they gave me." And she was a little upset about that. But
I bet. We're going to take a really quick break right now to pay for the show. So we'll be back probably 30 seconds. Okay. We'll just hold on. Yep.
At Facette Realty, our phones are ringing off the hook. Buyers are searching, but there's just not enough inventory.
At a retraction, who would that be? On Toughest Defender or something? Are you guys there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did someone have someone else?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah.
I wanted to amend one of the questions
Is this
earlier.
Bill or Bob? I can't tell.
This is Bill.
Okay. Yep.
Amend my answer on one of the questions about the toughest player. I told you the Plattsburgh High School team was just unbelievable. But when I was a sophomore, but there was in my senior year, Barry Brannon was a great coach for St. John's.
Yep.
And we played them at St. John's, and he used the junk defense that night against us, and he put his son on me, and they played a box and won. And his son, and I can't remember his son's first name. It might have been Kevin, but I'm not sure. I know he had a lot of sons, and he played me. He was about, I would say, 5'11", 6 feet tall, and he played me in a box and won. And it just
box and ones are tough.
Just absolutely frustrated our whole offense. And Bobby took over that night, and he ended up scoring like 20 points, and we won the game by 1 point. And that kept our season undefeated as far as I was concerned, because that was I think our toughest game that year against Barry's team.
Okay. What colleges recruited, other than Syracuse, both of you? Let's start with Bob on this.
Well, I was recruited by Syracuse. I was recruited by Rhode Island, and I was recruited by New Mexico State. They were number 2 in the country that year. They had a great team. I went out and visited New Mexico State, and I came back after that, and I said, I'm going to New Mexico State. And then Bill called and says, why don't you come down for a visit at Syracuse and see them before you make your decision. So anyways, I said, all right. And I talked about it with my parents. I said, I really think I want to go to New Mexico State. And they said, my father says, well, it's going to be tough because, we like to see you guys play, and we're going to be doing a lot of travel, and we have to get an airplane or something to go out to New Mexico State. And that's basically, I decided to go to Syracuse because it would be better for my parents.
Sure.
And, they traveled so much watching us play at Syracuse. And
that's great.
it was a better choice for me at that time. Mexico State, they never came out there.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't fly at that time, and my mom, she didn't matter to her. She would fly or whatever.
Bill, how about you? What other schools?
I ultimately got down to 4 schools, and it was Syracuse. My second choice was Davidson. That was left.
Yep.
The third choice was University of Massachusetts, where Jack Lehman was recruiting me, and he had a player by name of Julius Irvin on that team.
Oh yeah.
And I could have had a chance to play with, and Rick Pitino. So they both were playing. And then the other team was University of Vermont with Art Loach was the head coach. And
nice.
I went to Syracuse, and I just liked the environment, the atmosphere of the games, the warm-ups. I went and watched Dave Bing play one of the games that I went to see, and it was just, that's where I wanted to go. That was close. It was close to home, 4 hours, but it was still it was a great environment.
I have a question. As you know, the New York State record holder for points in a game went to Peru. His name was Chuck Kinney, 98 points. Did you guys ever play against him? He's probably older than you guys, right?
No, I never. In fact, I can't even remember. I think Tony Papero was the coach then.
Okay.
When he was playing, and they played in the small bandbox gym in the old high school of Peru. And I heard a story about it one time of how and why this happened. That I think Tony said, we're going to Chuck, and I don't know what the reason was. But they just went to Chuck all night long, and he got the 98 points.
Amazing.
And it was. Anytime you score that amount of points, it's just unbelievable. So.
I have another question here. Each of you, when was your last dunk? Your last dunk ever? Do you remember the approximate age, or?
Oh, you're not talking about. Okay.
Just dunking, like in warm-ups or whatever. Just the last time you guys could dunk.
Well, I'll give you my answer for.
Okay.
My last dunk in high school was in the sectional game when we played Plattsburgh High School. I think I had 2 dunks in that game that night in competition. My last dunk in college there was no dunk rule.
Oh yeah,
in college.
I remember.
However, I did dunk the ball, and it was against Colgate. And it was at the end, the last game of the season. We'd always play Colgate the last game of the season, and we're up by about 25. And somebody had fouled out, and so they needed to bring in somebody. And Coach looked at me, and Smitty was my roommate, 6'11", and he wanted to go in because he said, "I'm going to dunk the ball, Coach. I'm going to dunk the ball." And he said, "No, you're not going to go in to do that." So he put me in, and Smitty said to me on the way in, "Dunk the ball, Finn, dunk the ball." And I was like, okay, if I got a chance, I'm thinking I'll do this. So the very next play down is a breakaway, and I go up and I dunk the ball. And Ed Ashnault was the head coach at Colgate then, and he's charging on the floor, and I thought he was coming at me to either swing at me or he was just a crazy guy. So that's when I did it in college. But my last dunk was probably, I would go to these, loved to work summer basketball camps. And I think I might have been at Golden Valley, and one of my teammates, Bill Case, we'd always play pickup ball, and and I think I was probably around 38, 39 when I was able to dunk the ball still. And then now I can't even get off the bed. It's no jumping ability at all right now.
Yeah, Bob, how about you?
I would say I was about 55 when I last dunked.
Wow, that is
I'm
amazing.
73 now, so yeah. When I first moved up to this house I'm living in now, and I did dunk then, and I'll tell you a funny story about that. Aheim, who was not only a good coach, but he was a great basketball player.
Yeah, I know. Yep, I heard.
Bing wanted him to go to Detroit and be in the backcourt with him, and Jimmy didn't go because he didn't want to get drafted. If he would have played, he had a school deferment at that time, and he was doing graduate work at Syracuse, and then he took the assistant coaching job at Syracuse and to keep him out of the military. And anyways, I remember we weren't allowed to dunk in practice, and Boeheim, he didn't want anybody dunking in practice. Well, one day I got upset with one of the guards because they were always trying to get a charge against me in practice. And I said, when I come down, I'm going to slam that ball and I'm going to kick his head. I was so mad at Tommy Green. And I came down and I went over him and I dunked it, and I grabbed the rim, and then I kind of kicked my feet towards his head and knocked him over.
Oh my gosh.
Boeheim came over and says, "Okay, that's going to cost you 100 laps around the outside of Manley Fieldhouse," which is like a dome building. I don't know if you've been there,
I've been there.
It's a big building. Anyways, it was real cold out after practice, and he went to the back, where we came in to go to the locker room in the back of the field house. He went in, grabbed a chair, and put his feet up against the window, and he counted my laps. And I got down to 99 laps. I finished, and I went to the window and knocked on. I said, "Hey, Coach," I said, "this is my 100th lap." I said, "But you know what?" I said, "I feel good. Why don't you sit there for another 100, and I'll run another 100." He said, just get in here and take a shower and get back to your
You or something
room.
else.
Yeah, I was a little. But he kind of used to aggravate me a little bit.
Yeah.
And we didn't get along that well.
Okay.
And I know Billy didn't get along that well with him either, because Jimmy was like he was the best and knew most about basketball than anybody in the whole world.
Mhm.
And I asked Bing that one time. I said, what do you think about Jimmy? And I said, your roommate. And he said, well, he's kind of the cockiest guy I've ever met in my life. He thought he could beat anybody, and he was better than anybody. And I said, yeah, that's what I kind of get from him.
Yeah.
But
we're going to do some word association real quick. Just give short answers on these. We'll always go with Bill first. Okay.
Okay.
Mike Bove.
Well organized, great coach.
Okay. Bob.
yeah, he was a great football coach, and well organized. I was the manager of the football team the year we had Leon Angevine at the school, and I'll never forget the game against Plattsburgh High School at
Bailey Avenue.
Bailey Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and Syracuse or Peru won 31-0, and Mike had brand new red shirts that he bought that would really shine at night.
Mm-hmm.
And he had new hoodies that they put over the uniforms when they came out to warm up. And he was so well organized, but he was a great coach.
Yep.
Kind of tough to get along with also, but
That's okay. Let's go with Don Verkey. Bill first.
Don Verkey, great player.
Is this Bob or Bill?
I played him. This is Bob.
Okay.
I played against him my freshman year at Syracuse. He played at Broome Tech, and we played them, and they were a good junior college team, and we beat them. But Don was he was like their best player on the team, and he was tough. And then when I got to Plattsburgh State, he was a great player. I wish we had him my senior year. We would have gone a lot further. But we had Jim Perkins, who's really a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And
Gino Rubin,
Jimmy,
too?
Both of them could have played at Syracuse, I think.
How about Gino Rubin? Was he on that team?
Rubin?
Probably not, huh?
No.
Remember him? Okay.
No.
All right. Here's a funny one here. This is from Gary. Ask them if it was true that John Zeron showed them how to shoot free throws. Is that true?
This is I'll take that. He
Okay.
Johnny Zeron lived down the street from us. He lived he lived about 15 houses down in Elm Street, and he ended up coming up. I talked him into doing this. I would shoot 200 foul shots a day, and I needed someone to rebound. So I paid Johnny 25 cents 100.
Wow.
And he'd come up, and he'd make 50 cents every time. And we'd shoot, literally, I was shooting them 5-6 times a week, 200 foul shots. And I was making, we'd get in stretches, and I'd make 82, 85 or so in a row, 60 in a row, and break it. And we would end up doing our top numbers were about 192 to 194 out of 200 for the session. And he made 50 cents every time. And he always insisted that the reason why I got the scholarship to Syracuse was because of his foul shooting rebounding. And I owed him big time for
He's
that.
such a good guy, isn't he?
He was great.
Yeah, he
I tell you what, I'm kind of upset because I used to pay him 50 cents 100. Next time I see him, I want my money back. You only paid 25 cents 100?
Yep.
Holy mackerel!
50 cents for 200.
Yeah. Wow.
That was big money in those days.
Yeah. Gary also said Bobby's post-college basketball playing career was probably the best of his career. He played with guys from undefeated Miami Dolphins, ABA, Steve Shubin, we mentioned him. And they both played in Montreal a bunch, both you guys. And you played with Mike and Jimmy Lee, Bill Smith, and more. Right?
Yeah, we used to bring in Mike Lee, Bill Case, Dave Miller. He didn't play for Syracuse. He played, I think, for Rochester. And we bring him in for the PBA. We used to have a lot of fun with the PBA.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we won the PBA one time, and I don't know if Mike Dean wasn't on that team that year as well. But we had one of the years we won the PBA. Maybe it was twice, but I think it was 1 year for sure that we won the PBA. And I'll tell you, the best, one of the best college players one of the best basketball players I ever played against was every time, and Bobby would do this too, we would go to Plattsburgh and play in Memorial Gymnasium pickup games. That was when Tommy Chapin was there. Tommy Chapin was one of the best players I've ever played against. The best player I've ever played against is Dave Bing. He was out of college, but we would play at Dalshay's basketball camps. And he was the best player. But Tommy Chapin was a great player, a great player for Plattsburgh State.
Wasn't the PBA fun, guys? It was so much fun.
Yeah. And every time I talk to Bill Case, who we stay in touch with, he keeps telling me, he'll bring up PBA. It's PBA time.
Yes.
Because we'd bring them in, and they would stay at our house, and we would reminisce about all the basketball that we played, and it was just a great time. We had another kid that would come in to play with us, was Mike Kitts.
Oh yeah.
Who became an all-time great college referee.
Yep.
And Mike Kitsy was friends with the Lees, and he'd come up with them, and he was kind of like we'll use you as a guard when we need you, Mike.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Mike Lee was my roommate in college at Syracuse. And, and then Jimmy, his brother, was 2 years behind, and we were all pretty close. I mean, Billy calls Mike more than I do, but I talked to Mike. I just talked to him about a month ago, and we still stay in contact. And he comes down here to Florida like almost every year, and stays with me or another friend of mine. And Mike Dean. In high school, I played against a guy. What was his name?
Ernie DiGregorio?
Ernie DiGregorio. I played against him in high school.
Very similar players, huh?
Yeah. And he played a lot like Mike Dean, or Mike Dean played a lot like Ernie D. They both would dribble the ball like a yo-yo, and they were quick, and they passed the ball. They were really good at passing the ball. But when I played Ernie D in high school, it was in a New York State tournament that he was playing for Connecticut, and I remember I guarded him, and the difference between him and Mike Dean, Ernie took a hook shot from the foul line, which I don't know any coach in the country would let your player do that.
Guard,
but because Ernie was so good, he could do anything he wanted with the ball. And he took a hook shot, and he missed it. I said, I can't believe he took a hook shot from the foul line. But he did, but he was good. He was really good.
Randy Senecal wanted to talk about a game that Bill played in. I think it was a men's league game where they were down by, I don't know, like 12 with about a minute to go, and they came back to win. Verk was on the opposite team, and Randy Senecal, and they talked about, Bill, you missed a 15-footer at the buzzer? That's not like you. That's what they said. Do you remember that shot?
Did we win it or lost?
You lost that one, and you missed a 15-footer. You probably always make them, but I was just wondering if you remember that shot.
No, I don't. I'm sorry, Randy. I don't remember that, but I do. I know that there was. I played in a tournament in The Hague with.
Oh yeah.
The guys from Crown Point, Doug Anson
Yep.
was his. Yeah, okay, that group, and they took me down to The Hague one weekend, and I remember driving down. My father would go down with me, and on the first game, I scored something like 38 or something like that. The next game, we played against the team from Warrensburg with Buddy York, and he had 76 points in the game. The final score was like 161
Oh
to
my
140 something, and we beat them. And I had 72 points in that game.
Gosh.
And the last game was a game like you just described. We were down 10 points with about a minute and a half to go, and I scored a bunch of points in the last minute. We tied the ball game and won it in overtime. And I had 52 in that game. And they didn't give me the MVP. They gave Doug Anson the MVP because he was the real local guy down in that area. And
That'll happen.
And they gave me the most valuable offensive player.
This is a question for Bob. What was it like having Matt Galarno as a teammate? That's from Randy.
He was a great guard.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason. I mean, we did so well. They would get up on me, and all you had to do was get Matt the ball, and he was a scorer. He could score. He could play defense. He was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
He was quick.
He was quick, and he was a great ball player. I really enjoyed playing ball with him.
I'd like to get him on my show.
During the summers, of course, he came down and got his banana splits from us all the time. And Matt and I would play ball at night. We'd go down to Keysville, and there's a basket had a light over at the elementary school, and we would play till midnight.
Of course.
And down in Keysville at the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, we'd battle. Yeah, and he was great. I mean, he played great defense. He'd jump on your back and do whatever it takes to beat you. But
I remember watching him. I was very young. He had so much heart, and heart, as you know, goes a long way. So, this is from Dane Wall, and it's to Coach Finney. And he was a very good coach, very intense coach. We had a heck of a team during the 77-78 season, losing only 3 games, had Ronnie Hamill. You were coaching that game, Bill?
Ronnie Hamill and Dane and Chris Lacombe and Jeff Passanal.
Oh, yeah.
They were, it was, and it was a great team. And I only wish Dane would have, I wish I would have been able to coach him for all 4 years. He was a super player.
He said, my dad, Tom Glasgow, always said he imagined Coach Finney got much more pleasure coaching the ladies and the Peru teams. Probably right.
No,
Really?
I mean, you know what? I looked at it this way. I was not coaching women or men. I was coaching people. And that's, I told my guidance counselor as a 9th grader when they called you and said, what do you want to do in life? And Leo Bourgeois was my guidance counselor. He was about 5'2", so he would stand on the 4th step, and I'd stand on the bottom step so I could talk to him eye to eye. And he would say, and I told him I want to be a teacher and I want to be a coach. And that's what I wanted to do all my life. And I was able to give back from basketball. The sound of the swish that drove me to shoot baskets for hours on hours in my backyard became the sound of seeing kids light up when you were teaching them and seeing them improve. That was just the greatest feeling.
Yeah, and Dane finished by saying, I just want to thank you for pushing me as hard as you did. I have such fond memories of that time in my life. And he said to say hello to Mrs. Finney as well. So that's very nice.
Yeah. One of the kids from that team just visited me the other day, Chris Lacombe, who's now a lawyer out in Utah, I believe. And he visited us at Hilton Head the other day, and it was great to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Great to see him.
And this is from Hal Cohen. I know Bill from his days at Syracuse. I was in kindergarten when he was playing. And subsequent annual alumni games that you guys might have played in. I believe we have played against each other in PBA. Better fact check on that, he said. He was an outstanding high school and college coach, more importantly, and an outstanding person. I also enjoyed speaking with him, and he said, I hope both you guys are doing well. That's from Hal. Dr. Hal, as you know.
Oh, yeah. We would go to the Big Orange Camp, and Hal would play against Marty Head in pickup games, and they would never play on the same team. They always wanted to push themselves. I have never seen intensity like I saw when they went against each other. And it wasn't animosity at the end. They were always friends. But they played as hard against each other as I've ever seen two people play. It was amazing to watch them. And the coaches would all sit there, and they were all amazed at what they were seeing as well. Al was he did the 599 in a row in Canton in high school, 599 foul shots, I believe, after practice. And he started the thing off, and the gym was empty and everything. And when the townspeople heard he had up over 500, they started filling up the gym to watch him finish.
I know, yeah. My buddy Neil Fassett, who you probably don't know, he said, Lace, quit talking about yourself. And I said how many free throws I had in a row, 387 times. And so I'm allowed one more. And Neil, I don't care if you're listening or not. I once made 388 in a row. So okay,
wow,
that's the last time I'm going to say that, because Neil is one of my best friends. I was his high school coach. He's probably saying, Lace, why did you do that? Let's see.
Well, hold it. No, Tom, I got to tell you a story about me. I think, Bobby, isn't this correct? Didn't the Facets live down on where our camp? Okay, I think one of the Facets saved my father's life.
Would it be Fuzzy?
And my father was out fishing at the in the bay at the Red Buoy one night, and the storm came up quickly, and he's there with another a neighbor of his, Fran, and I can't think
Morehouse.
Morehouse, right?
Principal,
They couldn't get the anchor undone, and somehow the boat got capsized, and they're hanging on, and they're yelling at the top of their lungs, and I think
one of the guys was mowing the lawn. One of the sets was mowing the lawn, and the lawnmower cut out, and they could hear him yelling.
You might have the wrong Facet family. I think it's Fuzzy's son. Fuzzy, remember Fuzzy Facet? I think you think of the Beekman Town.
It could have been Fuzzy Facet that saved him.
It could have been. He's listening, by the way.
Oh, is he? Okay. Well, maybe he'll know that story. But somebody went out and got them, put them in the boat and saved them.
We'll talk to Fuzzy after. He's
all night.
Fuzzy's in his 90s. He's doing great. He really is. He was,
holy mackerel!
Yeah. So
we're in our 70s, so
that's okay. Gosh. This is from Bob Garrow. You remember Bob Garrow, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You're talking about the great referee, Bob Garrow, right?
He said he reffed one of your games. For some reason, you guys played at Canton. I'm not really sure why. And Bill, he said you really played extremely well. And
that was probably my freshman year. We played community college, 2-year school, and that was probably. I think we did go to Canton and play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he reffed
but I
that
don't
game.
think Hal Cohen's father was the head coach then, because I think he did eventually coach.
Yes, he did. Stan, what a great guy he was.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Earl Burnell. You know Earl?
Oh boy, yeah.
He said Bobby was not a good fisherman. Is that true?
My friend Steve Riley and I went up into the mountains one time fishing, and we stayed overnight. We had tents, and we stayed overnight, and we got in a raft and went out into the little lake that was up there. And we weren't catching anything. I mean, we couldn't catch any, weren't getting bites or anything. And we looked over, and these Earl and a couple other guys were in a boat, and they're pulling one fish in after another. And Steve looks up and he says, "Who are those assholes over there? How are they doing that?" And the next thing you know, Earl says, "Hey, is that you, Bobby?" And I go, "Oh boy." I said, "Yeah, who is it?" He's Earl Burnell. So, anyway, yeah.
Did you put a worm on there? Did you? Maybe that was the problem. You didn't have any bait on there.
Well, no. Earl came over and he threw some corn around our raft. He says that'll draw them in. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, the next thing you know, we did get a couple, and yeah, that was a kind of embarrassing time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my thought about Earl Burnell was he was a great referee. I always liked him as a referee, but he was even a better coach. Mm-hmm. And I coached against him at Beekman Town, and it was one of my first years when I was the head coach at Peru, and Steve Tolosky was my assistant coach that year. Mm-hmm. And we called the timeout. We're down 1 point with less than 15 seconds to go. We have the ball. And I call a timeout. Everything's fine. And I told the kids that we're going to call another timeout because Coach Tolosky said we've got 2 left. Mm-hmm. And I call another timeout, and Wayne Benson comes over, or Dean Benson comes over, and he says, "Coach, I got to give you a technical foul. You just called a timeout you don't have." Mm-hmm. And I went nuts. I'm looking at Steve, and I'm saying, "I thought you told me we have 2. "Oh, I did, Coach, but it must be wrong. It must be wrong." And so I went over to Earl after the game, and I said, "Earl, this was the play I was diagramming up. Do you think I would have won it, or we would have won it if we would have been allowed to do it?" And he laughed, and he said, "That was a good game, Coach." And he walked off. But he was a great coach as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, I always like to ask this question: Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers? I have to ask that. Who's better?
I think Paige Becker would have been a better player had she not had the injuries. Mm-hmm. But Caitlin Clark is a great player.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And, Bob, what's your...
Caitlin Clark.
Okay. Isn't she fun to watch?
She can run, and she moves the ball up the court. She's unbelievable.
Larry Bird said she's one of the best passers he's ever seen. So, what's your top 3 or top 2 NBA GOATs in order? Just 2.
To me, I would say the best ever to play was Michael Jordan.
Okay.
And I thought Bing was great. Dave Bing was a super player. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Larry Bird. Those are the 3 tops, I would say.
How about you, Bill?
And
I liked Michael Jordan, and then and I know that he didn't control. I mean, he did control the game, but Bill Russell was. The amount of championships he won. He wasn't the complete, the complete overall player, but just he was such a winner.
Yeah. Well, we're past our time. There's so many other questions. We had such a great time here. A lot of people had tons of comments. I can't get to them all, and those guys are going to get on me after. But we went 8 minutes past our limit, and
we'll do a sequel sometime, Tom.
Definitely. You guys are great, honestly. Again, Bill and Bob Finney, the only 2 brothers ever to play Division I basketball. And I believe I counted all the people that played Division I. I think there were there might have been more, but I counted 10 in all. So that's outstanding for Section 7. That is. So
yeah. Okay.
I'm glad you guys are doing great. Keep it up. Hopefully, I'll see you guys someday, and we'll have some fun. So. You guys take care of yourself, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sincerely appreciate it.
All right, Tom.
You guys take care.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Bye.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Tom Lacey Sports Show. We'll be back again next week with another show on Hometown Radio, WIRY.